All right, so a big marketing slogan of ours, a big term that we like to use a lot, and I love this one. It's a different kind of microdose. You know, we're really referring mostly there to Amanita, but of course we're kind of referring to Blue Lotus and stuff as well. But I guess for the purposes of this video, could you explain to people why we say that and why we would even market that in the first place and encourage people, hey, to approach and look at this as maybe a different kind of tool, different kind of microdose?
People think of psilocybin and LSD when you think of microdosing, really. And, they work on completely different receptor sites than Amanita does. It truly is a different type of microdose. It elicits a different experience. The growth and evolution that occurs from it is truly different than it is with psilocybin or LSD or any of the other compounds that people are notoriously microdosing. So yeah, it truly is. It's a different kind of microdose.
Yeah, what kind of like effects do people get when they're truly like microdosing Amanita?
The point of microdosing is not intoxication. It's not necessarily to feel it. It's not to alter oneself in their day to day. The point that the reason that people are microdosing is for the evolution and the growth and the healing that it seems to elicit in individuals. So Amanita, it works on completely different receptor sites than something like psilocybin, as I mentioned. So the effects are different, even though, again, they're not like pronounced effects. That's not what we're looking for. But what a lot of people will find is that they're a little more relaxed. They're a little bit more in their body. They're a little bit more grounded. They're a little bit more in tune. People will often find that the way that thoughts flow through their head is a little more cohesive, a little less destructive. There seems to be more space between thoughts, allowing one to redirect those thoughts and bring those thoughts back into, more cohesion or back to love, as people like to say. There's kind of a softness to it, which is really, really wonderful and welcomed. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a big part of this is the mindfulness that goes into the lifestyle of living with like a different type of microdose, right? Being mindful of all these different things that you just said right there. But also there's very interesting, and I know that this is something you've talked about for hours on end at this point, but very interesting physiological things that go on when you take Amanita muscaria. And that would explain maybe, why it produces some of these effects. But could you briefly speak on that, sort of the pharmacology of that,
Yeah.
and how it is a different microdose, pharmacologically speaking?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I mentioned, psilocybin, LSD, they hit the serotonin system. Amanita doesn't seem to. It actually does seem to a little bit, very slightly. We don't really have much data on that, but it does seem to be an aspect of it. But what it's really hitting, the three main systems are the GABA system, the glutamine system, and the cholinergic system. It's glutamate system. The glutamate system. The three main systems that it really seems to hit are the GABA system, the glutamate system, and then the cholinergic system. GABA is our inhibitory system. It's what something like alcohol hits. It's what something like Xanax hits or Valium. It allows one to relax. It increases social inhibitions. It makes one more open, more bubbly, maybe, decreases anxiety, things of that nature. It can help with sleep. Our glutamate system is what something like ketamine works on. Glutamate is our excitatory system. And, we don't really have any data on this, but it really seems that it's very likely the action of ibotenic acid, which works on the glutamate system, that maybe can increase neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, allowing for these new programs that one is attempting to write to really stick. And to create grooves in a sense so that one can, not only when they're on or in their microdose regimen, they're getting these effects and these benefits, but they last seemingly indefinitely because we've created these new neuronal networks. And that's a really, really important, powerful aspect of Amanita. Like it seems to reinforce, these neural pathways, which allow us to continue these benefits, continue having these benefits and these effects long after we've stopped taking it. And then there's the cholinergic system. Cholinergic system is what a lot of like the smart drugs hit, or nootropics. So a lot of people have found that Amanita is one of the most potent nootropics out there in the natural world, or even above and beyond that. I personally have found Amanita to be like one of the most potent nootropics like there is out there. Um, so, in that, there's maybe an increase in verbal fluency. There's maybe an increase in memory recall. There's the ability to think a little bit quicker, to move a little bit quicker, to act a little bit quicker, all while having the space to choose, a higher thought, or choose something more in line with self-love, or whatever it may be.
Right. And the neuroplasticity aspect of all of this has always been really interesting to me because, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any real um, scientific literature that solidifies this yet. But it's almost kind of the same way with psilocybin in a way when it comes to that.
Sure.
But there's reasons why we kind of put that forth and believe that there might be some neuroplastic effects to this. And so, could you explain some of the reasons why we kind of might think that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of back to what I was saying, in the sense that it seems to. I mean, I guess benzo withdrawal is maybe the biggest indication of that. So, like, one, using Amanita for benzodiazepine withdrawal, it doesn't seem to just like provide relief. It seems to literally heal and rewire the brain, so that, like, for me personally, when I was going through benzo withdrawal, after one dose, it felt like I had actually healed. I wasn't just finding relief in that experience. I had actually healed a little bit afterwards. That relief was indefinite. And we find that, again, like I mentioned, we're finding that people, after their microdose regimen, they're considerably better than before they started it, or the issues that they were going in to work on, and ancillary issues that they didn't even know that they had, are maybe considerably easier to deal with, or just non-issues at all after the fact. And that would strongly suggest that there's neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, rewiring of the brain going on.
Right, right. And we know that substances and compounds that interact with our acetylcholine system have the potential ability to help, with thought formation, memory recall, and so there is a bit of neuroplastic like effects with that alone. But the um, ibotenic acid within Amanita muscaria, this is an area that really interests me. Is a lot of people go to different ketamine clinics and talk about the neuroplastic effects of ketamine due to its, and I'm sure there's more reasons than this, but the sort of glutamanergic response and experience and everything that's going on there. There is a literal sort of kind of rewiring.
Mm-hmm.
And ibotenic acid, as we've talked about at higher doses, it feels more similar to ketamine, than it does serotonergic like psilocybin. And it has this sort of glutamanergic activity similar to ketamine, right? Yeah. And there is a feeling that I've experienced, I've heard other people report, of after a high dose Amanita experience, especially with some ibotenic, there being kind of like this afterglow effect.
For
sometimes.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's also interesting to note that ibotenic acid is an agonist of glutamate, where something like ketamine is an antagonist. So they actually have like quite differing effects in that sense, or differing pharmacological activity, but there seems to be a lot of similarity, and it'd be really cool to get some data and some studies done on this and see exactly what's going on. But yeah, as far as microdosing, it's also different. It's a different schedule than one would find with microdosing most other substances. Something like psilocybin, for instance, somebody wants to take, generally the protocol is 1 day on, 2 days off, or 5 days on, 2 days off. With Amanita, it's a little bit different, in the sense that it seems to be the best if it builds up in the system over time. So you're taking it almost akin to taking like a medication, where you're taking it consistently throughout the day, daily, for a predetermined amount of time. So maybe you want to take it maybe you want to do a month-long regimen. Some people want to do 2 weeks to start off. Some people like doing 6 months. Some people take it indefinitely. But the goal would be to basically have it in your system consistently. So you're taking it 2 times a day, generally minimum. Some people do once a day, but then up to 3 to 4 times a day. And the easiest way to do this is with something like capsules or gummies. One can do the ice cube tray method, where you brew up your tea, you pour your tea into an ice cube tray, and each ice cube would then be one consistent dose. And then dosing generally is around zero point 0.2 grams to 2 grams for microdosing. I personally find my microdose closer to 2 grams. I would imagine yours is similar.
Mine's, yeah, between like 1 to 3. It depends on what kind of microdose I'm kind of going
Yeah.
for, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and that's another good thing to note is like there is somewhat of a range in each of these dosing plateaus, we'll say, and yeah, there can be stronger microdoses and less potent microdoses. I think generally a good place to start is around 350 to 500 milligrams. 350 milligrams would be the gummies, 500 milligrams would be the capsules, and then to work one's way up from there. I think what we're finding, which is a little which is inconsistent with what we thought initially when we started this. And keep in mind, we're figuring all this out as we go along too. Like this is a relatively new thing here in the West, so we're scraping data and learning from all you guys what seems to work the best. And what I'm finding, it seems, is that people's sweet spot for microdosing is generally closer to like a gram or so than like the half gram that was kind of out there for a long time. However, it's always important to start low. So start at 350 milligrams, half gram, and work your way up. Take it 2-3 times a day consistently. Watch your thoughts, watch your responses, watch how you navigate through the world, and be really aware and conscious of what you're going through and experiencing, so that you can really reap all the benefits and help guide the experience. And another thing is that Amanita is super intuitive, and our bodies are very intuitive. So you can kind of tell like when it's time to take more by listening to your body, or when it's time to take less, when it's time to start a new microdosing regimen, when it's time to stop an existing microdosing regimen. If we listen to our bodies, it really helps us gauge, what we're needing and where we want to go. And then another thing is commitment. A lot of people don't notice anything initially, particularly with microdosing. It might be a few weeks before they start really seeing. It might be a couple months before they really start seeing the benefits and what they're looking for. So commitment and consistency is really important as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sticking with it for a couple weeks, being mindful. One of the reasons I love getting feedback from our community so much is because it does seem like there's so many different use cases, and it's always interesting to see the different use cases. Some people might, start microdosing to help them with anxiety. They might start it to help them with sleep. Some people might use it to help them get off cannabis. Some people might use it to help them get off of alcohol and benzos. So yeah, and there's obviously people using it for more reasons than that. And it's just always interesting to see how it sort of plants its mycelial network into people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite stories about microdosing was in the early days. I was doing monthly Zoom meetings for Dreamer, and I had this woman come on who was 2 weeks into her microdosing regimen, and she was like, I can't tell what's going on, Christian. And we talked, and in this little Zoom meeting group that we had, and I gave her things to look out for, and watch your thought processes, watch how you're reacting to situations. Like, you're not necessarily looking to feel anything, which gets tricky for some people, right? And it was the next Zoom session, which was a month later, and she was in a month-long protocol, so she was already 2 weeks in when we met, so she was 2 weeks out of it when we met this next time. And she came in and she was just beaming, and she says immediately, she's like, Christian, I figured out what was going on. I was like, yeah, explain. And she said, well, I didn't realize, because I wasn't watching my thought processes, but what I've learned is that self-deprecating negative voice in my head just went away. It just went away completely. And like, what a powerful thing to experience. And then what a powerful thing to recognize. Like, she had that benefit when I met with her the first time, but she hadn't recognized it yet. And that's like, so there is a little bit of like, consciousness involved in this. But yeah, we just see time and time again how unbelievably beneficial and powerful this can be for